If you align your life with your design, you're going to have a lot more confidence.
I do find that a lot of people, especially in the faith space, really get caught up on this thing of, this is what I love to do, but is God calling me to do the thing that I love to do?
You can be a pretty good at a lot of things. And if pretty good's good enough for you, you don't have to keep searching.
Is it the future calling us there, or is it us going, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna climb my way to it?
I think it's almost indistinguishable.
Okay. You were listening to Mind Shift with Aaron McManus and Erwin McManus. How are you doing today, Dad?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
You seem like you're in a chipper mood.
I'm in a very, very good mood.
Yeah, it's a good day today.
All
I'm
right,
a little sleepy, and I didn't speak all day yesterday. So.
I have an opening question because you said I was late, but I was here at 11:58 and we're on at 12.
No, you were here at 11:59.
No, 58.
No, I clocked you.
I gave myself
It
that
took you
extra
a minute to get in the door and get to my office.
And so are you late if you're here at 11:59? I'll even concede the minute.
Yes, because what is our motto about on time?
Oh, you're going to hold my own words against me? Our motto is, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, it's unacceptable.
Well, but we have practical. 15 minutes early is on time. And on time is late. And late is you wait outside. So you definitely weren't, but this is your show, so we're not.
If you want me to wait outside.
I don't want you to, if you're outside, we're doing the podcast outside. No. You had a morning and you spoke all day yesterday, and we have our morning meeting, which is interesting because you're usually at the morning meeting, or you're on the road and you'll call in if you're here. But having these little debriefs are good for the team. Sometimes it's one of those things where like it's a redistribution of workflow. So we're figuring out how to navigate that. And oftentimes it's really just learning that we have never had a weekend and we'll never have a weekend ever again. That's just part of owning your own business and being an entrepreneur and being plugged into all the different things we get to do. But you had an interesting weekend. You were in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, so what I did is I flew to Salt Lake on Friday, spoke at an event for our friend Jimmy Rex on Saturday, then flew back home Saturday night, and then was here Sunday morning. So it was a crazy weekend, but it was really fun to be there. Jimmy has this tribe, is the only way I can describe it. I think it's called We Are the They, and they've been going through a name change, but I think that's how they started. And
they have a new name now?
I think so.
Oh, interesting.
I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm not going to say what it is.
Okay.
But I do know that it's been We Are the They.
Okay.
And it's just really good to be in a room with him, and his lineup was just ridiculous. He had Ed Milet, and he had a guy named Chris Williamson.
Yeah,
who I think goes by Chris Willix on Instagram. And from what I discovered, he has the second largest podcast behind Joe Rogan.
Yeah,
he's from England, and I spoke and he spoke, so it was an interesting time. And we covered multiple regions of the world, Central America, and then United Kingdom. And I really enjoyed him. Very smart, very witty, very dry British humor. And so it was a business event, but Jimmy always takes business events and really turns them into life change events, even faith events, because Jimmy grew up Mormon and was a very devout and involved Mormon, and then had a radical transformation in his own spiritual journey, has become simply a follower of Jesus. And so I, no matter what I talk about, I told you this, is like last time I spoke at this conference, I talked on human frequencies and communication. This time I talked about internal structures that limit us and mind shift. And each time when we do the Q&A, he asks me about Jesus. And so I think it's really interesting. I even said, Jimmy, no matter what I talk about, you always just ask me about Jesus. And he looked at me in the sweetest way and said, well, you're my pastor. And what I do know is that he cares about everyone in the room, and he wants them to have a really authentic connection to God. And he wants them to understand who Jesus is. And I guess the way that, we communicate Jesus here made sense to him.
It's really cool.
So it's really cool. Yeah.
But I kind of want to dive into a couple of things today.
Okay.
Recap. I've gotten a few text messages from people who watched the last episode and were wondering if my power turned back on. My power is back on. I have hot water. And that is all to just a shameless ad that I'm going to just plug right now. To Rooter Solutions, the plumbing company that God sent down from heaven to my front door. And Fernando, who is the owner and the CEO, and just the most amazing man that I know when it comes to all things plumbing. But really, he is an amazing friend, and he is a client of ours, but a friend of ours, and someone who's a part of our Mosaic community and a part of our mastermind, a part of the Arena community as well. But he's my guy. I didn't, he's on our WhatsApp mastermind community, and when I found out that my house was flooded, I texted him immediately. I was like, "Hey, bro, this is what's happening," and he's like, "Can you send me some pics?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's like a waterless lagoon dungeon down there," and he immediately sent guys out. I think he had guys out in 30 minutes to an hour. I had to slow him down because he was like, "I can get him there immediately," and he just kind of held my hand all the way through. Every guy that he sent, even other companies that were his friends' companies that, he was like, "Hey, let me send these guys to just make sure you're good, or, get water out, or XYZ. Every which way in the process, his guys were amazing. They were trustworthy. They were kind. They were so upfront and honest, and just able to explain kind of, I don't know anything about plumbing, and they were able to like kind of hold my hand and walk me through and go, "This is like what you're dealing with. This is what you need. This is what you don't need. Buy this, don't buy this." It was just really incredible. So shout out to Rooter Solutions. Again, I already shouted them out in the last podcast. Him and his daughter were watching it together, and they tagged me in the thing.
All right, so I know they have like offices all the way down to San Diego,
yes,
here in LA through the Valley.
Yes.
And so since you're bringing them up, it's Rooter Solutions.
Rooter Solutions. And I'm going to tag them in this pod.
Awesome.
This is not an ad. This is an ad. They are not sponsoring this. They just saved my butt. And I can take warm showers now because of Fernando. And it's also, I didn't tell you this, but like they changed my water heater because I had a waterless tank. It was destroyed in the flooding. And they were amazing. They got a tank out in a day, I think. And I have the best water pressure and the best heat that I've ever had.
All right, so this is not an ad. This is a thank you.
This is a thank you.
This is not a sponsorship. This is a friendship.
Yes, Rooter Solutions.
That's the best way to do life.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so to plug all the other things that we're doing, we have the Arena community, which meets every week, Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We have all of our online content, masterclass information, art of communication, the 5 elements, 7 frequencies, all the character matrix, all of the 40 hours of you teaching and masterclass informations in this community. We also have the Arena conference. You can buy tickets. We'll tag that in this episode as well. We have over 12 speakers. I just found out you invited Ben Newman to speak at the Arena as well.
I think I did.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. We have like Will Gradara. We have the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele. We don't
know who's going to show up, but we invited a lot of people. A lot of people said yes, and we'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah, but we definitely have Donald Miller, which is amazing.
Yeah, he got back to me again, and he said, "I'm just so excited about coming.
Yeah.
I think I may bring my wife," and it's pretty cool.
So we've got some amazing speakers, and so sign up, register today. And honestly, you can pay the $1,000 ticket fee, or you could just join the Arena community and be a part of the Arena, and you get a free ticket to conference. So it's pretty easy. Okay, let's dive into this conversation, right? And people give us a hard time for plugging our own stuff, but we don't do ads. So
why would people give us a hard time for
I don't know.
plugging our own stuff? Because this is our own podcast.
I know. They need a mind shift.
Yeah.
But
it is interesting.
Talk to me. What's interesting?
We put this podcast out to the world, and it's free.
It is free.
And so the same people who will go, "Why are you advertising your stuff?" are not going, "Hey, why are you giving me this for free?"
I know. They took time out of their day to rate and review us and be like, they just plug their own stuff. And I'm like, well, who else would we plug? Rooter Solutions. I
actually think we should plug our stuff more.
We should. And we'll do a better job of talking
and I think it's one of the reasons sometimes people complain is because when you don't do something enough, when you do it, it seems out of the ordinary. If we were just very upfront and were always championing the things we've worked so hard to create, people go, "Of course you're going to champion that." And, every day, pretty much, I get an email or a text from the Democratic National Party asking me for money.
Did you see Biden's Did you check your DMs? I sent you a DM. Biden's post with his eyes.
No.
Oh my good Lord.
No, I'm just saying.
Wait, no, hold on.
The party has no problem asking me for money every single day.
Wait, you did see it. Maybe you didn't realize. He posted that.
Oh, that's scary.
I guess it has something to do with like the Kansas City Chiefs. Is it a Chiefs ad?
No, he did not post that.
We drew it up at Chiefs. I swear to you, it's on at Joe Biden. Is that POTUS?
No, that.
So that's not his real one.
That cannot be him. Don't do that.
I don't know. Oh wait, it's not. Okay. It's like a Finsta account. Oh, I just got live on the pod.
We're not going to edit this. We're going to keep this on here because
I ain't even ashamed, not even a little bit. The best part is that the people blowing it up is like Eric Huberman, he's going to be on our podcast, and Andres Figueroa, Sean Kelly, Nathan Reed, like a bunch of our homies that are part of the arena.
Look, President Biden has enough problems with promoting something he didn't do.
Okay.
All right. But anyway.
That's definitely run by a conservative.
I was just saying that if you believe in something, see, I'm not even against the Democratic Party asking for money all the time, because if you believe in something, you ask people to support it.
Yeah.
If you create something that is helpful. Oh, I love this post. John Akoff, who I just got to know last year at the Global Leadership Summit, he posted something in Instagram that was so good. He actually said, hey, you want to one of the lies we say?
Talk to me.
I wrote this book, and if it only changes one person's life, it'll be worth it. He goes, no. No writer really believes that, because if you only want to change one person's life, don't write a book. Just make a phone call, have a 30-minute coffee.
Send a text. Keep it quick.
And focus on that one person.
Yeah.
The reason you write a book is you want to impact hundreds of thousands and millions of people.
Millions.
And the reason we say that is it's our way of protecting ourselves from a book failing. If it changes one person's life, then it's been worth it.
It's like the truth in that, fam. One person's life ain't enough. I want to change the world.
John is saying, stop lying to yourself. When you write a book, you want to change millions of people's lives, and you should want to change millions of people's lives. And so, John, I want to thank you. You really affected me today, because I'm going, when I write a book, I'm not going, if it changes one person's life. If I want to change one person's life, that's the dinner, that's the coffee, that's the breakfast, that's the one-on-one conversation. You write a book because you want to change millions of people's lives, and you don't have time to meet with those millions of people one-on-one.
It really is crazy. Okay, but here. Your book has been getting tagged on Instagram because it's in all these airports across the world. I think it was in Bali. I want to say someone just tagged me in Saudi Arabia.
Someone just, no, I know who it was.
Who was it?
Dr. Amen.
Oh.
Just sent me a text saying, I was in Cairo. Funny that you just text me. I saw your book in the bookstore.
Okay, hold on. Because I thought I was dreaming when I saw that email from Dr. Amen. He's a remarkable psychologist, like a brain neuroscience.
Yeah, he's amazing. And
he's also been like Rogan. He's been on Bartlett.
I think like a year ago, you said, hey, Dad, is there any way you could reach out to him?
Yeah.
And then Mariah asked me over the past year, and I never did. So this is where relationships are the highest value, highest commodity, highest economy in the world. Because I have a great friend, Ed Milat. And I remember Ed telling me a story one time about being really good friends with Dr. Amen. So I text Ed and asked him, if he felt comfortable connecting me. Within minutes, he's saying, of course, brother, let me ask him first.
Oh, so it was Ed.
Yeah, he said, but let me ask him first if he's comfortable with it, which I love that. You always protect your friendships and your relationships.
That's not even offensive.
No.
You're friends with Ed.
Yeah.
So if you know what I mean, like
I always send a little, hey, if this is inappropriate or if you don't feel comfortable with it, it's all good. Like, he's like, oh yeah, no problem. Then he gets back to me, introduces us, and Dr. Amen's like, I was in Cairo, just saw your book in the store.
That's cool.
And I'm like, Dr. Amen saw my book.
Yeah. Well, you guys follow each other on Instagram, and that's kind of how I tracked down that you might know each other because he follows you follow him.
I just never assume anyone knows me.
My man, he follows you on Instagram.
I didn't even realize that. I would have reached out, but
no, it's so cool. So, I would love to have him on the pod. I'm a big fan of his. He did a great conversation, I think, with Simon Sinek or Russell Brand. I can't remember who it was, but I really loved the pod. And he talks a lot about like what makes your brain healthy, what makes it unhealthy, and even just like each person has a unique set of physical attributes. And so like some people can't gain weight, some people can't lose weight, some people struggle, some people alcohol. He pretty much is like the forefront guy on saying alcohol and smoking weed and smoking cigarettes is the worst thing for you. Like if you are doing any level of drugs or alcohol, you just don't wonder why you might be depressed or might be frustrated going through mental health stuff. Like that is the first thing. And he's an older gentleman. It's like he studied this for decades. He has some great podcasts out there. But anyways, Okay, so your book is all over the world, in Cairo,
Which
in
is so
Miami,
exciting.
in I think Bali, in LA, and Phoenix, like these amazing airports all over. This is exciting.
Yeah, it is. And to everyone who has already picked up Mind Shift and read it, man, thank you so much. But I'm absolutely certain the content of the book is life-changing, life-altering. And thank you for spreading the word and letting people know, because the book is doing great and it's getting out there and it's impacting people's lives. And in fact, one extremely large real estate company didn't even know me, and they reached out to me to help their company because they read Mind Shift. And I'm just excited about the impact the book is having on people. And it is true. When you write a book and it connects to people, you can be 1,000 different places at the same time, or you can be 1,000,000 different places at the same time. When Atomic Habits, sells millions and millions and millions of copies of the book, James Clear is having a conversation with 8 million people, 9 million people, 10 million people that he could not have one-on-one, which to me, that's the power of writing and of books and of things like podcasts.
I love it. Okay, so one thing that I have found, or one thing that I've been asking myself in the conversation we've been having, is how to believe that you deserve big things without becoming a narcissist. So I'm going to pose it as a question.
Yeah.
How do you believe that you deserve big things without becoming a narcissist?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question, because it feels like everywhere there are all these podcasts and clips about how to deal with narcissists, as if they're everywhere. And I think a part of the problem is that when someone irritates you, or you don't like them, or they act like a jerk, they're a narcissist. So we're basically just calling everyone we don't like a narcissist right now. And so that's one side of the spectrum. But I think it was Alex Hormozi who actually talked about that they've identified 3 characteristics of highly successful people. And the first one is basically that you're a narcissist. That you have this grandiose view of yourself that you just deserve more. You deserve success, you deserve wealth, you deserve the win, and you just have this extraordinary sense of your unique election by the universe to be, because you're awesome. And no matter how you describe it, I'm listening to it going, wow, characteristic number 1 for great success is you have to have almost like a narcissistic view of yourself. And so a huge part of my own personal analysis of this is I've graphed a lot of people on psychological assessments, and I found this to be overwhelmingly true, that the most successful people I've graphed over and over and over again have an expansive view of themselves, that they really do believe that they're smarter, better, more talented, more gifted than everyone else. They have this, they're just oozing a sense of self-confidence and even self-importance. So they never question, should they win? Of course they should win. It doesn't even really enter their mind, should I succeed? Of course I should succeed. They never have a moment of self-doubt of, should I have more money? Or should I have more houses or more planes or more stuff? Because their internal universe says, yes, this is who I am. So how do you succeed if you don't have that? And because,
What were the other two?
What?
What were the other two?
Ironically, the first one is like this overwhelming sense of confidence, but the second one is an incredible insecurity.
Wait, what was the third?
Self-control or impulse control.
Yeah.
And because
ability to stay calm.
Yeah, impulse control. It is calm. Yes, but it's maybe even more than that. That your emotions don't have mastery over your actions, and so impulse control is really, really important.
I'm working on it.
Yeah,
I would say I'm like 50% better than I used to be.
Yeah. And so years ago, when I went to this one neuroclinic with someone who asked me to go with him because he wanted our brains to be compared, they actually measure for impulse control. I actually had the highest measurable impulse control that they could measure. And then the friend who took me had the lowest.
Who was it?
I'm not going to say on the podcast. And you work out with them sometimes in the same place, but not together.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah. He's a narcissist, though. But he is. He has all those three things.
All those characteristics,
Yeah.
and he's very successful.
Yeah.
But you have that drive. And so I look at it and go, okay, I have pretty extreme impulse control. And I definitely have the insecurity. the internal self-loathing of, am I ever going to be good enough?
Right.
But I don't have, even measurably, I have the opposite of what is a good, powerful, narcissistic personality. Because I look at some of my friends and I go, I just need a drop of that. I just want a drop of that. I don't want, so much where I'm drunk on it.
I know. Jamie Kernlima gets on you about it.
Yes, she's one of my really dear friends.
Erwin, what are you doing? You need to do this.
She came at me pretty hard one day when she saw my psychological graph, and she said, why would God give you so much talent and not give you a drive to influence the whole world?
Yes.
And I said, Jamie, I actually do want to influence the whole world. I don't want to say I don't. I'm just uncomfortable with it. And I look back and I realize it has really been self-limiting. I've written 12 books. I used to be, one of America's best-selling, authors, and I never did a book tour because I never believed people would show up.
It's crazy to me that you've never done a book tour.
Never. I've never done a book tour because just the psychological trauma in my mind of I go to Dallas or Chicago or New York or Miami to do my book tour and no one shows up. It just feels overwhelming to me because I don't have that. Of course they're going to show up. I wish I had that. I need that.
Yeah.
And so I look back and I realize I've actually developed an internal structure to compensate for not having that natural sense of I'm awesome, which I am not criticizing because some of the best achievers in the world have that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go back to the question.
Okay.
How do you believe that you deserve big things without becoming a narcissist? You told me there's 3 factors.
Yes. I think, first of all, should I give you all 3 words at one time?
Yes.
All right. Create a triangle. Design, calling, character. I think one of the ways you develop self-confidence.
Is there one at the top?
I would put calling at the top.
Okay, and then you'd put design and character at the bottom. Okay.
Yeah, because what I would say is that begin with design. There are certain things about who you are, genetically, spiritually, in a sense that, it's the makeup of who you are as a person. And if you align your life with your design, you're going to have a lot more confidence. If you're trying to be someone that you're not, you're always going to lack confidence. And so that's why envy lacks equilibrium, because the moment you're living your life out of envy, you're trying to live out someone else's design and not yours. And so some of it is growing in understanding of your design. What are you just naturally good at? What is it that when you add discipline and hard work emerges even more rapidly than something else? So I would have never known that I was designed to be a communicator. There was no evidence of that when I was young or even in my teens or 20s. But very quickly, when I began communicating, I discovered that I accelerated faster than other people in my skill. And maybe that's what people call talent, right? Yeah. And because it's just potential. And then but the way I did it is I spoke a lot. I spoke on street corners. I spoke at the Mardi Gras. I would anywhere you gave me an opportunity, I just started speaking. And it didn't matter if it was 4 minutes or 5 minutes or 20 minutes. I just began speaking a lot. And I think it was pretty rough and pretty raw and maybe pretty trash early on. But I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And eventually it became a skill. But more than that, I think that actually a natural talent emerged. It's the same way with writing. I can look back and realize I was writing when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. I was writing short stories. I was creating fiction as a child. And when I had 2 little sisters, I had to put them to bed at night, and they want me to tell them stories at night, other people would read them stories from books. I would put the book aside and I'd say, once upon a time, and I would create stories from scratch every night. And they loved that I would make up these stories. So I realized from an early age, I had a natural talent for storytelling or story creating. And so when I became a writer, I wasn't very good at first. I mean, it was really hard to read my writing. But I had a really great editor who spoke into my writing and
Yeah,
called
but-
out my arrogance and
Yes, but
called me to humility.
Yes.
Yeah.
Back to design. So one of the things that we talked about on the phone was that you were talking about the things that you were designed to conquer, that we were all designed to conquer specific things, and that when we start conquering the things that are outside of our initial design, that's when things start falling apart. Can you talk to me about what we are designed to conquer?
The reason it's hard to answer the question is that design is different for every person.
Okay.
And
So speak specifically to the successful men that we are dealing with kind of in and day out, because I think one thing that I found is that, one, all men struggle. All women struggle. We're really focusing so much of our business on men and women, but at the higher level as men. So when we're dealing with these successful men, they're all having to conquer, whether it's on the business field or in the boardroom or in the whatever space it may be. On the football field, we have a lot of football guys. How do you manage people-specific design and what they're meant to conquer? Or is even the core value of that idea of like you're designed to conquer a specific thing, so when we're outside of that, we actually fail our design?
if you look at a person with, let's say, high talent, like, we have a friendship with Sean McVay, and he's an incredibly brilliant head coach. We also have friendship with Jerry Lorenzo, who's a brilliant designer. But if they flipped roles, they would probably both be unsuccessful.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by finding what you're designed to do.
I think Jerry could coach a football team. I'm not sure Sean could design a fashion label.
He does love sports. He does love sports. And his dad was the manager of the Mets and the Cubs.
I think
or
some
whatever
things
it
would
was,
carry
White Sox.
over.
Yeah. But
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And so when I say design, I think there are certain things that you're created to be good at, and they're easier for you, even though they're hard.
I would say that a lot of people have a hard time figuring out what they're designed to do. I would say that I don't know that I'm doing what I'm designed to do. I just figured might as well do something. So I do this. But it's something that looms in the back of my head, and I've got to imagine that a lot of people are asking that same question. What am I designed to do, and how do I discover it?
Well, one, maybe it's a process of elimination. Figure out everything you're not designed to do that you still like. So you don't have to worry about anything you're not designed to do that you don't like.
So first things first is just pick something you like to do and just do it more.
Yeah, I think design is a combination of passion, interest, skill, aptitude, and like you're really good at asking questions. And I think
because I don't know very much.
No, but I think curiosity is the highest sign of intelligence. And so when you're asking questions, I think that's actually your intelligence activating. So even though you're acting like you don't know, asking is a much more important intellectual competency than knowing. And curiosity and seeking, I think, is a real talent. But you're also like, you're a good communicator, but I don't know if you always find fulfillment in that.
Me?
Yeah. But I do think that you actually found far more fulfillment than you're willing to acknowledge.
In communicating?
Yeah.
I definitely miss it.
And I do think you have a raw talent there that if you chose to, you could become an extraordinary communicator, and it could actually become a career for you.
Okay.
I just think you have to decide what you care about talking about.
Okay, but if people are questioning what they're designed to do,
Yeah.
start
with what you love and what you're good at.
I do find that a lot of people, especially in the faith space, really get caught up on this thing of, this is what I love to do, but is God calling me to do the thing that I love to do?
All right. That's why calling is in another section of it. I think some of it is, all right, what is within the spectrum of abilities? Like, what are some of the things you could do with your life? And I think that's where I put the thing of design. And like, I know that I wasn't designed to be a professional athlete. I love sports and I'm athletic, but I wasn't designed to be a professional athlete. And it was a hard pill to swallow. I wanted to be a professional athlete. I love when Jeff Bezos talks about that, he wanted to study quantum mechanics, I think it was, or physics, until he realized that one of his friends could solve a problem in minutes that it took him days and days to not solve. And then he realized,
oh, maybe I'm just an inventor.
Yeah, that he's not supposed to be, have a life in physics, but as an inventor, poor guy, he had a terrible, second option in life, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, some of it depends what your standard of greatness is, because you can be a pretty good at a lot of things. And if pretty good's good enough for you, you don't have to keep searching. But eventually you realize, there's 3 or 4 things I can do pretty good. But this one, I think, has a higher ceiling. So you have to give up the other things you're pretty good at to do a thing you're really good at. And you might have two things that you're really good at. And then eventually, if you want to be great at something, you have to table the thing that you are really good at, but maybe not great. And, I think Kobe Bryant probably could have played a lot of sports. He probably could have been pretty good at a lot of things, but he was great as a basketball player. And you have, some who are like Deion Sanders or several others who, I can't remember them, who crossed different sports. And they eventually had to, and they were great at a professional level at several sports.
Yeah.
But they pick one to become, in a sense, almost timeless.
Right.
And it's the same thing in life. I mean, you don't have to compare yourself at that level, but to me, like, try everything you like and then find the things, in a sense, like you, and go, I like this. And the more I do it, I get better and better. So I tell people, look for things where you have accelerated learning. Every area, it can be physical learning, it can be mental learning, it can be spatial learning. Look for the things where you have accelerated learning, where it seems that you pick it up faster than other people.
Okay.
That's a really great sign that that's your design. And then don't get discouraged when it's hard, because just because it's your design doesn't mean it comes easy. It just means that you have the oil inside of you, but you need the oil rig that digs deep and through hard work and pulls it out.
Okay, so now let's jump into calling.
Calling is an interesting word for me because, I used to think it was a word only Christians use, but I was wrong. And it's a word that people that don't even believe in God use. It's kind of odd. But they may say things like, it's what I'm destined to do.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you believe that you're destined to do something, you're actually describing a calling. There's an odd sense, and this is a conversation I had with someone at Coach One-on-One recently, was you need the push of design and the pull of calling. The design is inside of you. You just have to do this. Your mom as a teacher, she just had to teach. Like, that was just her design. She's a teacher even when she doesn't have a classroom. She just had, it's what pushed her. It's what pushes her everywhere. It's not an accident that she felt compelled to raise $1 million to start a school in Malawi, because she's designed to teach. She believes in education and it drives her. It's the push, but the pull is the calling. And ironically, and I don't know if you know this, but before I married your mom, she told me that she felt, one, she was supposed to marry a doctor, and two, she was called to Africa. And I remember saying, well, I'm not going to be a doctor, but I will be a patient. and I said, and I'm not going to Africa, but if we do this right, you'll be able to impact any part of the world you want to impact. And I'm not shocked that 40 years later in our marriage, she's spending half her life in Africa, because she always had that call. It's a pull. Your mom doesn't go to Africa. Africa pulls her in that direction. She has the design, it's the push, to teach. Then she has the calling, and and she's called to the outlier in terms of economically. I am called to the outlier intellectually. We're both called to outliers, but she's called to the economic outlier, and she's has that calling on her life to people who are underprivileged, underserved, forgotten, never seen. And so that's the two. And I find this to be true for people who believe in God and people who do not believe in God. Whether you call it calling or fate or destiny, it's like a siren that demands this of your life. And if you listen to people like Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos, even when Bezos talked about the idea he had for selling books online, it's almost as if it's like a calling from fate or from destiny or from God to go create this. And I felt that. I mean, I was in my early 20s, and I told Cam before we were married, I know that in my future, Los Angeles is a non-negotiable. I felt designed to impact the world in a very specific way, but I felt called. I felt called to the city. And because I felt called to impact human history at an optimal level, And I determined that Los Angeles was the epicenter of the world at that time. And so you have to have both the push and the pull to actually have that elevated sense of intention that can replace that narcissistic sense.
So what do you do if you don't feel like you have that pull?
You have to choose short-term pulls.
Okay.
See, a lot of times I think we're looking for the pull that is beyond all pulls. Like, what am I supposed to do with my whole life?
Yeah.
And I'm going, I had a lot of short-term pulls.
Yeah.
I knew, and maybe it's like, maybe that's the delusional part of it for me. Every time I was doing something, I felt that's what I was called to do. Every city I was in, that's where I was called to be. Every challenge I was taking on, that's what I was called to take on. And so I think I had tactical callings in my life when I didn't know what the strategic necessarily calling was. And whenever there has been a shift, and there has been shifts. I mean, I've been married to your mom for 40 years, and she was always confused when I made a shift. And she was like, wait a minute. Why are you, doing fashion, or why are you doing film, or why are you doing this or that? I thought you were called to do this. And I go, no, I have a design that allows me to step into a lot of different domains. But my calling is much broader than what I think people are comfortable with. Because people would say, aren't you called to be a pastor? And I go, absolutely not. And I'm not called to be a pastor. And being a pastor is one expression of my calling. And we want to limit people. That's why you have to understand like your personal sense of calling. And I think it can expand and change over time too.
I think the idea around we want to limit each other into a singular calling is actually like really, really heartbreaking and very real. That I think people, I find people inside the religious space to be very limiting of others within their calling of, if you're called to this, you cannot be called to something else. It's a singular calling, when the irony is that he's in a singular God. There's literally 3 of him. So we find these ironic, or we find these ways of, like, even someone commented on our last post about astrology in our last episode. and I know she meant well, but she was like, no, all astrology is demonic and of the devil. And I literally was just like, LOL, no. Like, how can you miss so many of the mystical moments that are in the Bible? So many moments that are, whether it's men led by stars or these things that happen that are so mystical and so unknown. And I think it's the individual's fear to acknowledge that there are things that we just can't explain. And with those, some of those things are good, some of those things are evil, some of those things are God, right? I am always interested in hearing people's calling, because I think as people, we are always drawn to people with callings, with strong callings. And oftentimes I wonder which person threw the hook, right? Is it the future calling us there, or is it us going, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna climb my way to it?
Yeah, and I think it's almost indistinguishable when it becomes a part of your identity. See, this is actually a conversation about identity. And I know they look like external forces, but I actually think they're almost like internal forces.
What are?
Design, calling, and character. And because the calling isn't something out there, it's actually something here. It's like this deep conviction that I'm supposed to do this, that I'm created to do this, and I'm designed to do this, and I'm called to do this, and in a weird way, I'm destined to do this. And so it shifts from a could and a should to a must. And then when you wake up and go, I must do this, then it becomes this cocktail of that becomes really powerful when you wake up with the push and the pull.
We're talking about cocktails. Well, I took notes on a phone call that we had this last week, talking about, just a great couple conversations you've had with some of our amazing guys. And, luckily these are men who are just so, I feel like, vulnerable with you and vulnerable with us. Obviously, we want to be very respectful of this. So we're just extracting kind of our own principles that we've pulled from it. But one of the things that you brought up was that, and you've talked to me about this over a decade, because I was someone who really struggled with controlling their emotions. I either had no emotion or I had very, very high emotions. And so, how to manage that roller coaster and really equip myself with the ability and the handlebars to not just control it, but not be reactive to it, not be a slave to it, have mastery over some of my emotions and my ability to become, whether it's upset and the irony now is that, like, things that should upset me make me laugh. And the things that shouldn't bother me a little bit, and it's a work in progress. But you talked a little bit about how our emotions are this that can create a dangerous internal cocktail if we internalize our emotions and we don't ever let them out. So I think this speaks to men and women, but as men, we can speak to this. It's very hard, I think, for some men to really engage in their emotions, and what ends up happening when we internalize emotions, how important it is for us to get it out.
Yeah, I think what happens is when you begin to internalize negative emotions, you begin to place them in a space in your soul where you think, I'll deal with them later. I'll deal with them later. I'll deal with them later. And you just keep storing them up until they create their own chemical compound, which becomes explosive. And it doesn't always begin with a negative emotion towards someone. It can begin with a feeling of being disrespected. But I'm not going to deal with it. I'm just going to put it aside. Or feeling overlooked in life and just put it inside, or feeling that you're being undervalued and you just put it, like all these emotions, it can feel neutral in some ways at first. Like, I'm not angry, I just don't feel appreciated. And you think, well, how can underappreciation become something really destructive? Well, it can when you put it inside of the cocktail. And all of a sudden one day someone comes up and forgets to return, whatever, something that they borrowed, and you explode. And they think it's because you're upset. They forgot to return your, whatever
it might be.
Yeah, your book, whatever. And it's because you just feel like people don't care about your feelings, or they don't care about you, or you look overlooked, and when someone explodes at a server at a restaurant, that server didn't do anything that validated or justified it. That server just became a target for a lot of internal emotions that person hasn't dealt with. And by the way, that's one of the great dangers in marriage, is that you feel powerless at work. So you can't express those negative emotions to your boss. You can't express them to your peers. It's not safe. You don't have a release valve, so you go home, you explode on your wife or your husband, and then you explode on your kids. And what did your 8-year-old kid really do? They were just 8. They just acted like an 8-year-old, and you exploded on them because you have more power than them, and you feel powerless at work. And so now you're giving your negative emotions a place to be expressed. And that's why it's so important to be aware of what you're internalizing and getting it out somehow.
How can you become aware of what you're internalizing? What's a practical thing that people can do?
Listen to what you're saying to yourself.
Okay, can you give me an example?
Yeah, I'm just sick of people.
So what would you translate that into?
When when your voice inside of you is saying things like, there it goes again. Like, there I am, I'm being disrespected again, or I'm being ignored again. Like, it's listening to your inner narrative.
Okay, so then what would you do with that?
I think you have to do several things. One, you need to acknowledge that you actually feel that way. Secondly, you need to speak to it.
Yeah.
And because sometimes it's just not true. And then if it is true, you need to fix the circumstance that's creating that negative emotion.
Okay.
And, if you say, my boss is always treating me like I have no value. Well, every day you go to work there and don't say something, you're actually validating that negative behavior, because when you're going back, you're saying it's okay to treat me like that. So you have to take some ownership and go, I just need to get another job.
Well, I would before you even go there, I would go, have I approached my boss and gone, how can I create value? What do I do that creates value for you in this company? And if I'm not doing them, how can I do? Like, what are the things that I could do? What are 3 things I can do?
That's really good. I love that.
And then don't bamboozle your boss. Don't, hey, can I ask you a question? Then hit him with this thing. Hey, I'd love to pick your brain on how I can bring more value to the table. And if they dismiss you, find another job.
Yeah, because it isn't a bad situation to go, because remember, that person is a human.
Yes.
You go, my perception, and I might be wrong, but my perception is that for some reason you have a negative perspective of me.
Oh, I would never say that.
You wouldn't?
No, I would. The only reason I'm disagreeing with you is I would always posture myself, one, that I'm always wrong. So I'm going to come to you with humility.
Right, but that's not being arrogant. It's saying this is my perspective that
So
I've done something that
because I would never project emotion on someone else. So I would always start with, how can I be a better team player?
That's good. I like that.
How can I bring the most value within my job description? Is there a value that isn't being met in a different job that I could help when I have free time?
And you could say, are there things right now that you would like for me to change so I could be, more beneficial to our organization? Because I think you have to find some way to let that person tell you maybe why they're frustrated with you.
Yeah.
Because, maybe you're doing something that creates that frustration, that's creating that negative feedback loop.
Yeah.
But on a personal level, one, I just don't hold on to bitterness. I really just release bitterness and do not let it sit in my soul. And I think which is, by the way, it's the third thing, is character, because we don't want to ignore this, because what happens with character when your character isn't taken seriously, you end up with a design flaw, even though you have a design. You end up designing in a destructive way rather than a beautiful way. And you can see that. You can see it in like art. A person may be designed to be a great artist, but when they're filled with bitterness and hate and violence and darkness, their art just becomes really dark. And when they're designed to create great art, great music, and they're filled with hope and love and peace, the music comes out different. It's the same way you may be designed to create great wealth. See, I think there are people who are designed as entrepreneurs. They're just designed to create wealth. But if your character isn't established, you'll follow that design and destroy your family. You'll follow a design and have no friendships, because design without character becomes destructive in some way. And then with calling, when you don't nurture your character, take care of your character and build your character, you will actually feel unworthy of the calling and convince yourself that calling is no longer yours. Or you'll run from that calling because the calling standards are too high for your character. And so part of the reason you want to nurture your character, it isn't about being perfect, actually. Character is really about being true and being, aware where you're at, honest about where you're at, and doing the hard work of becoming a more virtuous human being. It's fortunately not about perfection. It's about integrity. It's about not living a life of hypocrisy. And so there's an interesting dynamic in that, because when you have character, you can go, wow, I may not have the talent that deserves this outcome, but I do have the character that can be trusted with this outcome. And that begins to build an internal structure for self-confidence. When you go, I'm designed for this. And then you go, oh, wow, and I'm called to this. It's a hard thing to embrace that you may be called to greatness. I mean, it's weird. You don't have to tell anyone, by the way. It's when Joseph, hears from God, and then Joseph tells his brothers, as if his brothers are going to celebrate that Joseph is going to be the most important brother of the whole lot.
He lacked some self-awareness.
There was definitely some lack of emotional intelligence there. And because other people aren't going to celebrate your calling. The best way to let others know about your calling is live out the calling, and they'll see it. So I think Joseph in the Bible is a perfect example. He was designed to lead. And he was an interpreter of dreams. And that was a gift that he had from the get-go. And he had a calling that was just absolutely sent on a crash course with prison and it seemed like he was never going to get there. But he did have this calling that was, in a sense, unstoppable. It made him unstoppable. But his character definitely lacked some emotional, relational intelligence. Because when he tells his brothers that they're all going to bow down in front of him one day, they decide.
Not sure Mariah would have dealt with that well.
And you wouldn't have dealt with it well if that was her.
Yeah, be like, yeah. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah, and it's human nature to want to circumvent someone else's arrogance.
Yeah,
or success.
Yeah,
and so but you realize that dynamic. What was forged over the years in prison with Joseph was his character. The design was there. The calling was there. The character took time. It's recurring in the story over and over again. Moses was born for what he was created to do. He was born to create a nation and to set a people free. He was called by God to do it. Took 80 years for his character to get in line, for the design and the calling to activate because of the character. And that's the thing. If the calling is higher, the character has to be deeper. If the design is extraordinary, let's just be really honest. We're not equal in talent in the world. Some people are just more talented than other people. We don't like to say that. In fact, you know what Christians never talk about? They never talk about intelligence. I mean, some people are just smarter than other people. And I think intelligence is a stewardship. If you're smarter, don't be more arrogant. Be more responsible. Do more good. And so intelligence is a stewardship. And your design puts more responsibility on you. If you've been designed by God as in a sense, you know, that metaphor of being a 10-talent person. And it doesn't make you better than the 5-talent person. It doesn't make you better than the 2-talent person or the 1-talent person. It just makes you different. You have more responsibility. So there's design, there's calling, and there's character. And I'm going to say this back to the beginning of the conversation. When the person says, oh, they just sell their own stuff, they're actually trying to go to war against your calling. They don't like your calling. They're the brothers who didn't like Joseph because he got a multicolored coat. When you can't celebrate someone else's success, when you can't recognize the hard work people do to create something of value, your problem is that you're Joseph's brother trying to throw him into a well or sell him as a slave or steal his destiny from him.
This is amazing. This is really amazing. This is the formula for self-confidence. And I think we got to figure this out and like film some stuff on this, because I think this is the next masterclass information that we need to build.
Yeah, I think it's really important in that, you know, I mean, I have a friend and he's so incredibly talented and successful. And he is like so many of my other friends who are so incredibly talented and successful. And they struggle with the weight of their success. They don't feel like they deserve it.
There's something beautiful about that, though, to me.
It is. They're my favorite. They're my favorite
with
people.
Those guys. Yeah, because the guys who go, you know, I don't know if I deserve it. I don't know if I'm like, yeah, but that's why. That's why you have. And I don't know if that's why you have it, but I love someone who has it and goes, I don't know if I deserve this.
Yeah,
because they're more likely to be able to like hand it off and build into other people, than just themselves.
Yeah, and it's really a beautiful thing when you realize, wow, this is a person that is so grounded in the fact that everything that has happened in their life is like a gift. And sometimes a huge part of my conversation with them are accept the fact that you're designed for this. and that you're also called to it, because if you were not called to it, you would be doing something else. And the calling is big.
Yeah.
Calling is big. So just accept that you have a bigger calling in your life than maybe other people. And so when people start judging you because of the bigness of your life, just realize that they're trying to measure your calling to their calling. And this is a side note, but I remember one time I was in this room with pastors and they were all like fairly successful. But the moment they got together, they all started talking bad about 2 pastors who were incredibly successful. Their churches were just impacting in such a large way. This is like 20 years ago when I was, maybe 30 years ago, I was much younger. And I remember listening and I thought, oh, if I don't say something, I'm a part of this conversation in the wrong way. So, and you know me, sometimes I just couldn't keep my mouth shut. And I said, hey guys, there's another possibility. And they go, what? I said, they're just more talented than us, and we're jealous.
Can you tell me who the 2 pastors were they were giving a hard time to?
At that time, it was Bill Hybels and Rick Warren. And I just said, hey, why don't we just accept the fact that they may just be more talented than us or more courageous than us. And it bothers us.
I do believe both of those leaders were phenomenally talented. I think they've both have their issues. Obviously, I don't even like either one of them, but I do think their greatness,
not as people, but just as
right. No, I'm saying like they're not people I prefer. Like they're not leaders I would prefer to listen to. Meaning that like they're not my
and they've both retired and
There's only caveat is personal preference and not about who they are as people. But I will say this is that I think maybe I don't know if they were more talented, but they definitely were people who were able to make people feel really safe. Right? Because I think you sometimes say things on stage and I'm like, why? Good people like us. And when you say those things, the good people, they don't like us so much because they feel alienated, because they feel, you know what I mean? Like not everything has to be a rocket ship to Mars. Some things can just be getting here.
I will say this, since you mentioned those two.
Yes.
They both had a clear sense of their design. They both had an absolute sense of their calling. And they both, for the larger part, managed the dynamic of their character. And
obviously Bill had a struggle later, but for the majority of his career, he was...
But even there, when you have an equilibrium problem with this triangle,
right,
it affects the design and the calling.
Right.
And I go, you always have the design, but the calling then gets distorted if the character doesn't get really grounded.
Can I ask a question that might be too further going into the character side of things? Because obviously that's part of the triangle I've always struggled with as well. But do you find that these guys, even your friends, people who are even in pastor spaces who have had character issues, do you feel that the triangle becomes completely broken forever? Like, is there a way that you can fix character?
I think people want to break those things forever.
Okay.
Because one, look, if it's the universe has no opinion on your character other than that you're good to people.
Right.
But Christians have a lot of opinions, but the Bible actually says that God's calling is irrevocable. So your calling is always there, but your character does have to create the support system for your calling. And your design is always going to be there. So what people don't realize is, those guys could have gone and started companies. Yeah, like I'm very clear. Like I used to be more coy about this, but I'm very clear about my own design. I could have started a company 30 years ago and become a multimillionaire, if not a billionaire. Like I've become more aware and more comfortable with the fact that I think God just designed me in a very unique and different way. I chose to apply that design in the work of bringing people into a relationship with Jesus and into the church. That wasn't the only thing I could do. And so what happens sometimes is when you end up having a break in your character. See, and I don't think those things are permanent. I think people mess up. I think people make mistakes. I think people are human. I think the weight of success oftentimes crushes people. And it's so easy to judge that. Where I actually become more suspicious is when a person doesn't change the character patterns and then tries to claim the calling is just as valid. Because the calling is valid, but now you got to apply it in a different domain, and so like, if I like mess up super terrible or something like that, other than becoming a serial killer or something, I may actually lose the right or the privilege of leading Mosaic. But it doesn't mean I lose my relationship with Jesus. And it doesn't mean that my design and my calling won't be activated in another area. God can use me in a great way somewhere else. And I read the Bible and I see a God not of second chances, but of endless chances. And, and so I go, if you feel like, wow, right now where my character is, it doesn't validate or it doesn't work in sync with this particular expression of my calling, then move into a different domain until you get your character into a place where it needs to be. Because frankly,
I have a question.
Yeah.
We've been going for about 50 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
But I want to go into this a bit because I've heard you refer to the Old Testament, the Ten Commandments, as God's lowest standard for humanity. You're like you'll mention it kind of as a caveat in some of your messages and even in your business space. Because this is the other thing is that I think some people feel uncomfortable with. Well, one, I've always, no matter what, because of my proximity to you, I've always been considered in a specific spiritual space. Even when I'm like, no, I just go. And I don't go even as often as I should, but I get to be a part of the family. People have a hard time with that. They can't distinguish the two. You've referenced, and I think people feel uncomfortable that we do business as well. But I'm like, how many people's lives have been changed within our business community is really amazing.
Yeah,
so many people have come to Jesus. Even at our last mastermind, a guy got baptized, which was crazy. We weren't even trying to do it. He wanted to do it.
And it's funny. Our friend Gerard Adams, texts me, goes, "Would you baptize me at the mastermind?"
Yes.
And I didn't know how well known Gerard was because I had people start texting me from all over the place going, Gerard Adams got baptized, and people in the business space were letting me know. And then one of his friends goes, "I'm joining the mastermind." And,
I'm texting him back right now.
And what's so cool is that we baptized them at the house of a couple I met on vacation who built a house down there, who are on a faith journey. In my first meeting with him, he was like, "I'm just exploring, God and faith and everything." So we got to baptize them in a house of a family that's on a spiritual journey and have that whole experience there. Because here's the thing, like I'm actually all about Jesus when I'm at Mosaic and when I'm in the arena and when I'm at home and when I'm wherever.
I was going to ask you that question about the Ten Commandments because do you feel like there was the lowest standard of our relationship with the way we should behave on earth in relationship to God? Or do you think that was God going, here's like how to not want to kill each other?
Like here's how to relate to each other.
Yeah.
Here's what you forgot.
Don't take your neighbor's wife because then your neighbor will start a war with you. Don't worship other gods because they will get in the way of what I'm trying to do with you and your neighbor. Don't steal because that alienates your neighbor. It seems to be like the roadmap for each other.
Yeah, it's
not even so much us and God.
Yeah, it is really about human dynamics. Even you shall have no other gods. He's basically saying don't start religions that manipulate people through guilt and shame. And
don't corrupt what I've given you.
Yeah, I do not give you permission to start religions that will actually hold people in emotional and spiritual captivity.
We need to do a whole episode on the Ten Commandments.
Yeah, we should.
That would be amazing.
I remember I didn't grow up in church in the faith, but I did see all the movies by Cecil B. DeMille. And I saw the Ten Commandments and I saw Charlton Heston playing Moses. And but I don't think I ever logged the Ten Commandments into my head until I became a person of faith in college. I read the Ten Commandments and I'm like, what? This is like the lowest common denominator of what it means to be a good human.
Yeah.
I was shocked. And when people would say, God's standards are just too high, who can live up to the Ten Commandments? So I'm like, well, anyone who's not like a jerk.
Yeah.
Anyone's not a criminal. And so there's a part of me that went, God, I expected a lot more from you. and then I realized, oh, wow, it's the other way around. God, you're really not expecting very much of us. And we're still not living up to that. So I started an experiment in college after I came to faith.
Wait, I think we're going to wrap this up.
Oh, okay.
Do you need this one right now?
No, we'll pick it up next time.
Okay, I think we've
to
been
be continued.
We've been going for a while, so I think we're going to wrap this episode up, and I think we need to break down the Ten Commandments with you on maybe one of the next couple episodes. I think that'd be fun.
All right, that'll be fun, yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you for listening to Mindshift. We're so grateful that you're joining us this week and each week. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, erwinmcmanus.com/YouTube. You can rate and review this episode on Apple Podcast. You can rate this episode on Spotify, and I'm sure other places, but those are the only 3 places that I check things out.
And people can leave comments?
They can leave comments on the YouTube.
All right, so tell me, do you guys want us to talk about the Ten Commandments?
Yes.
I'd love to know.
I also want to talk about hell because of that dinner I was at in Austin, and the person asked me about hell, and I always find it interesting.
All right. You guys want us to talk about hell, or can we
Yes.
talk about economics?
No. Both are hell to me. So let's that'd be amazing. Okay, guys, we'll see you guys next week with a new episode of Mind Shift.
All right. Here we go.